On this Sunday night, we have breaking news. A sports legend is killed. Kobe Bryant dies in a chopper crash.
Kobe going to the cup for 30,000. He's got it.
A look back at his career that went beyond basketball. New confirmed cases of coronavirus.
It would not be unexpected that there will be more cases.
The rush to track down Canadians with the potentially deadly disease. Plus, a Canadian mother and daughter killed on the ill-fated Ukrainian flight are laid to rest. And remembering Auschwitz.
My feelings really never change. It's a place of horrific event.
75 years since the liberation of the Nazi death camp.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. A legend in the world of basketball has died. Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash in California. His 13-year-old daughter was among the 9 victims. There were no survivors. Bryant spent his 20-year career entirely with the Los Angeles Lakers. 4 years ago, he retired, and at the time, he was the 3rd leading scorer in the NBA. Eric Sorensen has a look back at an athlete who was considered one of the best basketball players of all time.
The shocking news spread quickly. A helicopter crash in the hills of Los Angeles County killed 9 people, including one of the legends of basketball, Kobe Bryant. It was reportedly Bryant's own private helicopter, and that one of those killed was his daughter, Gianna, a budding basketball player herself. Bryant was married and father of 4 daughters.
There were no survivors. We have a manifest that indicates that there was 9 people on board the aircraft, the pilot plus 8 individuals.
A true global ambassador for the sport of basketball.
At the Toronto Raptors game in San Antonio today, there was an immediate tribute to Bryant. Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest scorers in the game. He was 3rd all-time until just yesterday, when LeBron James passed his 33,643 points. LeBron acknowledged Kobe, his fellow LA Lakers legend, with written notes on his shoes yesterday, because Kobe, like LeBron, was one of the few players to make the leap from high school to the NBA and go on to an historic career.
Thought he was going to be absolutely fantastic.
Tributes have poured in for one of basketball's greats. Former President Barack Obama wrote, "Kobe was a legend on the court and just getting started in what would have been just as meaningful a second act. To lose Gianna is even more heartbreaking to us as parents."
He was the standard for 20 years of, or maybe 15 years or so, of what a champion was.
Known as the Black Mamba, Bryant won 5 NBA championships, was the league MVP, an Olympic gold medalist, and an all-star 18 times in a 20-year career, all with the Lakers.
Those times when you don't feel like working, you're too tired, you don't want to push yourself, but you do it anyway. That is actually the dream. That's the dream. It's not the destination, it's the journey.
He was one of the first superstars who broke through in China as a symbol of the game that helped launch the NBA into the global sports enterprise it is today.
An incredibly, a brilliant man and incredibly passionate about, our game.
Just hours before he died, Bryant sent a poignant congratulations to LeBron James as James passed his career scoring mark. Bryant tweeted, "Continuing to move the game forward, King James."
And Kobe Bryant was also moving the game forward, and he had so much time left to do so. He was only 41 years old, and he was on the verge of being voted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Robin?
Eric, you've followed many basketball careers. Is there a Bryant moment that stands out for you?
I think it's the 81 points he scored one time. That's an unheard of number to score in one game, 81 points. And a year after that, I was doing a feature on Steve Nash, and I was asking some Americans about what do they think about him winning the Most Valuable Player award, Steve Nash, and one of them would have none of it. He just said, no, it should be number 81. And by number 81, he meant the man who had scored 81 points, Kobe Bryant, who really had that kind of impact on people just the way he played the game.
What a great story. Thanks very much, Eric. Now to Canada's first presumptive case of coronavirus. We're learning the man had signs of the disease while on the plane back to Toronto. That has healthcare workers scrambling to track down anyone who may have been in close proximity to him. As Jamie Maraucher reports, the patient in question did not report his symptoms when he landed at Pearson Airport.
As Canadian passengers continue to take precautions when flying to China, medical experts are now warning some returning travelers may have been exposed to the coronavirus.
Based on the latest information, the patient had symptoms on the plane.
That man in his 50s remains in stable condition in a Toronto hospital after returning on China Southern Airlines flight CZ311 Wednesday.
In a plane contact tracing perspective, we're looking at a 2-meter radius. If there were passengers within that 2-meter radius, they will be contacted no matter where they are in Canada.
When asked if the patient went through Pearson International Airport's advanced screening, officials said yes, but could not confirm if he reported his symptoms to border agents when he arrived on January 22nd. Instead, the Minister of Health praised the man for contacting 911 on January 23rd, more than 24 hours later.
The patient, when he became ill, more ill, that he realized he needed medical support, in fact followed all of the information provided at the airport.
And while officials say the risk to the public is low, the scenario has some concern the screening system has cracks. This global health expert disagrees.
These things do take time, but in this case, public health officials acted actually very quickly in Canada. It's actually a very good news from a public health system perspective.
Meantime, the patient will remain under close watch.
We'll definitely be continuing to maintain the same precautions and observation until we can be confident that there is enough improvement and that the patient is no longer at risk of transmitting to anyone else.
This as our healthcare system braces for the next confirmed case.
There will be more cases imported into Canada in the near term, given global travel patterns.
An increased inevitability as Lunar New Year holiday revelers return home. Jamie Maraucher, Global News, Toronto.
Health officials in China say the virus has entered a more serious and complex period, and the numbers reflect that. There are now nearly 2,000 confirmed cases in the country. The death toll has also jumped. 15 more deaths reported since yesterday, bringing the total to 56. Hong Kong, which was badly hit by the SARS virus in 2003, has now barred residents of Hubei province, where the virus was first detected, from entering the city until further notice. The U.S. government is reporting its 5th case of the coronavirus, a person from Orange County, California. The complication of this virus is that it takes days before there are any symptoms, so people could be exposed to it and not know it. That's prompted extra health measures around the world. Jennifer Johnson continues our coverage.
U.S. officials are now preparing to evacuate all diplomats, their families, and other American citizens, over 1,000 people, out of Wuhan, China, the epicenter for the outbreak of a new coronavirus. It's a process that could require several trips and planes.
We're not entirely sure.
George Goodwin, an American teacher in Wuhan, is nervously waiting to see what will happen.
We know, for example, that the U.S. consulate was told to evacuate, but they haven't been able to. And that kind of set a lot of us on edge.
There are now at least 5 confirmed cases of the coronavirus in the U.S., states that include Arizona, California, Washington, and Illinois.
She was infected in Wuhan, so she starts to develop symptoms 3 to 4 days after getting back.
Doctors advising people to take precautions because the incubation period for this new viral illness is so long.
Wash your hands frequently if you can. If you can't, try to use the alcohol. Stay away from crowded places where there are a lot of people that are sneezing and coughing, and just do general healthy measures.
The French government also held an emergency meeting and now plans to airlift its citizens out of Wuhan back to France. The virus is being reported in over 10 countries. Precautions are being taken around the world. This person escorted off a plane in Baltimore.
Because of the heightened time, we're just using an abundance of caution.
Surgical masks are selling out. Parks, including Disneyland, Hong Kong, are being closed as the virus spreads.
Of course, we're disappointed, especially it's my mom's birthday.
Chinese New Year celebrations have also been canceled, from a parade in Paris to celebrations in Colorado.
There are people coming from China, so we want to make sure that people are free of concerns of spreading of the disease.
Millions of people around the globe taking no risks as this deadly virus and fears of contracting it continue to spread. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Breaking news tonight out of Iraq. 5 rockets have been fired in the Green Zone in Baghdad, and there are reports the U.S. Embassy has taken a direct hit. The Green Zone is in the center of the city and is home to government buildings and international embassies. Iraqi officials say there are no injuries. So far, no one has claimed responsibility, but there has been tension between Iran and the U.S. after Iran's top general was killed in a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad earlier this month. The downing of the Ukrainian airliner was a casualty of that tense relationship. Today, the family of a mother and daughter killed in that tragedy is finally able to say goodbye. A battle with the Iranian government delayed the return of their remains to Canada. And today, a community came together for the funeral. Global's Kamil Karamali reports.
This is unbearable. I hope never, ever happens to anyone.
A heartbreaking eulogy from a man who lost his daughter and granddaughter. The bodies of 37-year-old Sahar Hadju and her daughter 8-year-old Elsa Jadidi lay in caskets in front of him. The tears flowing freely, but underneath it all, some relief. Their remains finally returned home after a battle with the Iranian government, which wanted the mother and daughter buried in Iran. With the remains finally home, those who knew them trying to find some peace.
We lost part of the family.
The mosque completely packed with mourners.
We had people from different religions here. We had people from different faiths, from different cultures. We saw that people were praying in different ways.
Our heart is broken, not just our families, everyone in Ontario.
Both mother and daughter attended this mosque regularly, an integral part of the community, which is why people here say they'll be missed so deeply.
I miss them, and this world really will miss them because they were so active, so lovely, so kind.
Sahar was an experienced broadcaster on an English-language show in Iran. She also ran a program at the YWCA in the Greater Toronto area to help settle immigrant and refugee women in Canada. The grief was too heavy for Sahar's father, her friends, now trying to move on with this in mind.
Hug your family members, your friends a little bit harder. Just know that we're blessed to be in this country, and we hope that it never happens again.
Kamil Karamali, Global News, Markham, Ontario.
In Mali, all Canadian military personnel are safe tonight after a deadly attack at an army camp in the central part of the country. 20 of Mali's security forces were killed during the pre-dawn attack. No one has claimed responsibility, but terrorist groups with links to al-Qaeda and the so-called Islamic State do operate in the area. Canada wrapped up its peacekeeping mission in Mali in September, but 10 members of the Canadian Armed Forces remain in the country. Canadian police officers are still deployed with the UN mission. They're expected to remain in Mali until next year. Rescue teams in Turkey are working against the clock to find more survivors after Friday's earthquake. A 2-year-old girl and her mother were rescued from a collapsed building today. They'd been trapped for 28 hours after the magnitude 6.8 earthquake hit. The death toll has climbed to at least 38 people. More than 1,600 are injured. Coming up, what the world saw when Auschwitz was finally liberated 75 years ago. Holocaust survivors have made a solemn journey to Poland. Monday marks 75 years since the Nazi concentration camp Auschwitz was liberated. An estimated 1.1 million Jewish people were sent to the camp between 1940 and 1945. 90% of them were murdered there. When Soviet soldiers liberated Auschwitz on January 27, 1945, there were still 7,000 people there. Tonight, we have the story of one Canadian who survived the war. Here's Heather Yerkes-West.
This isn't Joseph Gottdenker's first trip to Poland. He's called Canada home since the 1960s, but it was in Poland back in 1942 where Gottdenker's story began.
It was right in the middle of World War II. My mother had false ID. My dad, by that time, was already in concentration camp.
Gottdenker likely would not have survived had it not been for the heroism of a young Catholic couple who, risking death, agreed to take a Jewish baby in as their own. Gottdenker's parents survived the war. His mother found refuge in the Polish underground, but nearly every other Jewish person in their village was rounded up by the Nazis.
It was made what they call Judenfrei, which was free of Jews. So at that time, they either went to the aircraft factory that was nearby, to the forest and executed, or to Auschwitz.
Though he'll never know for sure, Gottdenker suspects many of his relatives, grandparents, cousins, uncles and aunts died at the Nazi death camp, among the estimated 1.1 million Jews murdered here. 75 years later, the number of survivors are dwindling, but those who are able to have returned to Poland once again. They gathered on Saturday night in Krakow's Jewish district for a candle lighting service.
Which was a really incredibly moving experience. There were, I think, about 10 or 15 survivors who were present. The oldest one was 100 years old, and the youngest one, I'm told, was about 74, and she was born actually in Auschwitz.
13 Canadians will be among the group of survivors taking part in a sombre ceremony planned for Monday, which will also be attended by Canada's Governor General.
Some of them they're coming back for the first time in 75 years. Can you imagine?
Julie Payette says their courage to return to the site of so much pain is humbling, an important reminder of how we all must never forget.
It is our duty, all of us, to remember and to stand against hatred, against racism, against anti-Semitism, always.
Heather Yurex West, Global News.
Time for a short break, but when Global National returns, the big travel worries that could impact booming tourist numbers. According to the United Nations, international tourism numbers rose for a 10th straight year in 2019. 2020 is expected to follow suit. But as Reggie Cicchini reports, political tensions and the threat of illnesses, including the coronavirus, could impact worldwide tourism.
In a world full of uncertainty, the secrets and treasures that dot the planet still pique curiosity and drive people to spend time and money on travel. According to the United Nations, 1.5 billion people traveled out of their country in 2019, a 4% increase from the year before. And while that is record-breaking, it was the smallest increase in years.
We did see economy slowing down last year.
It seems some travelers were packing worries instead of toiletries.
The UK, for example, the expectation around what would happen with Brexit had what we often call a wait-and-see attitude, both from consumers and companies, which at the end of the day makes people travel less.
Political and social unrest can contribute to a slump in international arrivals, but not enough to stall the industry.
What is really driving that is essentially the wealth that's being generated in a lot of developing economies.
2019's small rise in tourism did generate more than $1.8 trillion in revenues.
There's all sorts of supply chain impacts in terms of hotels, in terms of other activities that tourism dollars generate.
Some countries have a proven track record when it comes to tourism. Canada was the 17th most visited country last year, with an expected 21 million visitors. France, Spain, and the U.S. saw the most travelers in 2019. History and culture drawing tourists in, along with clever advertising.
A lot of these destinations are now looking at social influencers to come in and experience their location and then using that as marketing.
2020 tourism numbers are predicted to match 2019's thanks to global events like the Dubai Expo and Tokyo Olympics. But the year is off to a rough start. Economic and health threats are forcing governments to adapt to the unknown and plan for the future of travel.
This is probably one of the most important things, that there is an acknowledgement that the sector can actually contribute to the objectives that a country has in the long term.
Putting tourism to the test. Reggie Cicchini, Global News.
Up next, the hockey girls from Kyrgyzstan breaking stereotypes. Ice hockey is a much-loved sport in Canada, enjoyed by both men and women. But in many parts of the world, hockey is still male-dominated. As Radio Free Europe's Stuart Greer tells us, more than a dozen girls from a remote village in Kyrgyzstan are shattering gender stereotypes as their country's first all-female hockey team.
Emerging like winter warriors from a mud hut dressing room, these Kyrgyz girls are shattering stereotypes by taking to the ice. Meet Kyrgyzstan's first all-female hockey team. They've been playing for more than 2 years in the northern village of Otradnoye. 16-year-old Nurayim Kenjibayeva is the team's captain.
Kızlar utu alabız degensip kızlar da ойлоштум да жөйлө алышпайт алуу жок кыздар депчи. Бирок все равно кыздардагы балдардай эле күчтүү.
Through their physical and fearless play, the girls quickly earned the respect of their male rivals. They are even cheered on by their opponents. With no other female teams to play, the girls always have to face off against boys' clubs. Over the last 20 years, hockey in this Central Asian nation of 6 million has gradually taken root. There is now a professional league and more than 1,000 registered amateur male players. But there was nothing for girls until Salamat Abdrakhmanov started the all-female team for his daughter and her friends.
Мурун гараж болчу буякчы. Мен машинемди койчумун. Анан азыр бул формалар келгенге байланыштуу бизге в любом случае кийинип чечингенге керек болуп калат экен да. Разы.
After the hockey game, Noraim Kenjibayeva heads back home. She may be challenging local stereotypes, but off the ice, she can't escape from her domestic duties.
Көбүнчөсү оюн болуп калса үйгө кечирээк барып калабыз. Бирок кыз болгон соң үйдө жардам бериш керек. Кыздын үйдө жумушу көп. Үйгө барып тез-тез уй сайын төртөй мал салып элеп.
But after her work at home is done, Noraim can get back to the rink. With lights hung on trees, she and the other girls can chase their hockey dreams well into the night.
Хоккейчилерди көрөм, кыздардычы, прям ушундай кыялдан ошогорчу жетким келет. Аябай сон ойношот, неден ийгиликтире жеткен. Кыргызстанда чыкпаган соң Кыргызстанда да ойнойт деп чыгарып, кыйын кыз болуп чыккым келет. Бирок менин азыр эле бир селим бар. Кыргызстанда бир тренер болгум келет да, кыздардын.
Noraim could soon be sharing her knowledge and passion for the game. With growing interest from girls in neighboring villages, there may soon be enough players for a second female hockey team in Kyrgyzstan. Stuart Greer, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty.
And that is Global National for this Sunday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Maligne Lake in Jasper National Park. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be back here tomorrow. Have a great night.